Good morning to Damien Comolli, president of Toulouse Football Club. We invited him to share with us his rich experience in the world of football, especially in the field of scouting. Let's start from the beginning. Could you tell us something about yourself and your journey?
Good morning to you. Thank you for this interview. I began my football career as a youth coach at Monaco, where I stayed for 4 seasons. I coached both the under-18 team and what was then called the Cadets, now known as the under-16s. Later, I took an experience in Japan, where I coached the under-18 team in Nagasaki. Upon returning to Europe, I received an offer from Arsenal, who invited me to join the club to work in recruitment. I spent 7 years in London. Initially, I was responsible for recruitment in France. Then I became involved globally. My official title was European Scout, but in reality, I operated worldwide. I followed countless international competitions, from the World Cup to the European Championships, scouting talents in every corner of the globe. In 2004, after my time at Arsenal, since 1997, I was called to take on the role of sporting director at Saint-Étienne. It was my first executive position. Curiously, my departure from Arsenal coincided with the day after the Invincibles won the title at White Hart Lane. After 1 season in France, I was hired by Tottenham as sporting director, a role I held for about 3.5 years until 2008, with much broader responsibilities than before. Later, in 2008, I returned to Saint-Étienne. It was not a mistake to go back to the club itself, but rather the fact that I found myself working with the same people I had difficulties with before. Unfortunately, the experience proved complicated once again. In 2010, I was contacted by Fenway Sports Group, who had just acquired Liverpool. They offered me an important role, which I accepted. I left Saint-Étienne mid-season when we were top of the league, right after winning the 100th derby against Lyon. I spent 2 years in Liverpool, then decided to take a break from direct club work for various reasons.
Tell us specifically about consulting and new international roles.
During that break period, I initially declined many offers. Some interesting opportunities slipped away, while progressively I felt the need to dedicate myself to other things. I worked closely with several Premier League and Championship clubs, offering consultancy in the recruitment of both players and technical staff. Coaches, fitness trainers, psychologists, and other specialized profiles. I also supported a French coach in his professional development, assisting with career management. At the same time, I was part of the boards of various tech companies active in the sports world, based in Australia, the United States, England, and France. This experience allowed me to deepen the managerial and technological dimensions of football. Additionally, I collaborated with the media, particularly in France and England. I recall a very intense season with SFR Sport, during which I closely followed the entire League One. In 2017-2018, I had the opportunity to collaborate with Ali Koç during his candidacy for the presidency of Fenerbahçe, a position in Turkey assigned through elections. They say it is the second most followed election after that of the President of the Republic. I participated in the entire electoral campaign and in drafting the sports project. A few days before the elections, Ali Koç, who was indeed elected, offered me the role of sporting director. I accepted and worked at Fenerbahçe for about 18 months. I decided to resign for ethical reasons. Dynamics and decisions were being made behind my back that I did not agree with and that did not reflect my values. At that point, I had to choose: return to a familiar role as sporting director at a top European club, or accept a completely new challenge. For the first time, I was offered the position of president in a League Two club. It was a challenge that intrigued me. I wondered if I could build a competitive team capable of achieving promotion. Another decisive factor was that, for the first time in my career, I was not just an employee, but also a shareholder. The ownership group of Toulouse entrusted me with a shareholding, radically changing the nature of my involvement and my relationship with investors. For this reason, I decided to accept the position at Toulouse. Since then, I no longer deal directly with scouting.
What are your thoughts on scouting as a key to leadership roles?
What have I learned from the years spent in scouting? And how have these experiences helped me access leadership roles? When I arrived at Arsenal, I still had the mentality of a coach. Since I was young, I knew I would not be able to have a career as a professional player, so I became passionate from an early age about the figure of the coach. My role models were not the players, but the coaches. So when Arsène Wenger asked me to follow him to Arsenal as a scout, I accepted even though I had no specific experience in that field. I asked him, "Why me?" And he replied, "I don't know, but come with me." At first, I kept thinking like a coach. I remember a discussion with Liam Brady, then Arsenal's technical director. I asked him how he judged a coach, and he replied, "By the quality of the players he buys and sells." I was shocked. For me, it was about methodology, strategy, charisma. But Liam insisted, all that is secondary. The quality of a coach is measured by his choices in the transfer market. The following Monday, I told Arsène everything, and he confirmed it. It was a tough lesson, but enlightening. Over time, I understood a principle that I still consider fundamental today. What really matters is the raw material, the players. Talents make the difference, not just the coach. You can put anyone on the bench, but if the players are not up to the task, you won't get far. On the other hand, if you have top-level athletes, even an average coach can get good results. The true value of a scout and of sporting management is knowing how to build a team. Every year, between September and October, I eagerly awaited a call from Wenger. He would ask me, "Do we have a good team or not?" Even he, one of the best coaches in the world, knew that his work depended on the human resources at his disposal. This awareness, developed on the field through travels, observations, prepared me for decision-making roles and allowed me to contribute to the strategic development of several clubs.
Tell us now your thoughts on the alignment, recruitment, and data factor strategies you implement at Toulouse.
We do not change our identity based on the first-team coach. Our club does not build its playing style around the individual figure of the first-team coach. Rather, we have created a structured system where the entire organization, from working methodology to tactical identity, is perfectly aligned. All 11-a-side teams, including the women's team, adopt the same model, the 3-2 in the build-up phase, with no exceptions. This complete alignment allows us to clearly define a succession plan. There is a strategic technical committee composed of myself, the strategic manager, the head of football operations, and the academy director. This team works closely together, following the pathway from the under-16 players up to the first team. When selecting players for the professional group, we project our evaluation over a 12-24-month horizon, focusing on positions where the academy is already developing promising young players. The goal is to avoid hindering the growth of our best talents with unnecessary signings that might block them behind 2 or 3 professionals in the same role. A crucial element is the careful management of the wage bill. The first team is built around a defined group, 17 outfield starters plus the goalkeeper, who together represent about 95% of the salary budget. The remaining 5% is divided between the 2 backup goalkeepers and 4 to 5 young academy players who complete the squad, up to the 23rd player, depending on the tactical and weekly needs of the coach. This structure leads to a virtuous outcome. When a replacement is needed due to injury or suspension, it is always a young player who steps onto the pitch. This is not just a strategic choice but an identity issue. This is what makes us reliable in the eyes of families and players. In Nouvelle-Aquitaine and Occitania, it is known that Toulouse truly values and uses young players. This creates a virtuous cycle that continuously attracts new talents.
Tell us about rapid exposure and accelerated development.
Our lean structure and succession plan allow our youngsters to be introduced quickly at higher levels. Currently, the 2005 generation is already prominent. Think of Maïssa, now at Monaco, Restes and Diuma, who are starters in the first team. Among those born in 2006, we have Jacanos, who is steadily integrating into the first team. Behind them, the 2007 class sees Mati Samiot regularly called up on the bench, and should Seguilaume leave, we already consider him the future starting goalkeeper. When these factors combine, methodological alignment, succession planning, and squad management, the key to our success emerges. Currently, we are the third club in France for the number of call-ups to youth national teams, with 15 to 16 players selected from under 15 to under 21, including Lema, Wissa, and Manu Kone. In the last 20 years, Toulouse has ranked as the 11th best academy worldwide for minutes played by former trainees in the top 5 European leagues. This is the metric we use to measure our success. We do not base it on the number of contracts signed or on whether our players compete in lower leagues, but on their real impact at the highest levels.
What do you think about scouting and its evolution between eye network and information?
I have always believed there are different types of scouts. The complete profile, able to communicate effectively, equipped with a keen eye, a network of contacts, and constantly updated information. The silent observer, introverted and reserved, but with extraordinary talent in recognizing potential. The network specialist, less focused on direct observation, but a powerful and timely source of information. Today, more than in the past, information is the real key, especially in professional recruitment. Over the past 5 years, our success has also come from rapid decision-making. Our structure is small and agile, and there is no need to wait for ownership or coach's approval. We decide and act immediately. This makes us more reactive, an indispensable factor for a club with the 16th largest wage bill in the league.
Can artificial intelligence replace humans?
Yes, completely. I say this with conviction. The traditional role of the scout is about to undergo a radical transformation. I am surprised by how slowly football has adopted new technologies, while we maintain a competitive advantage precisely because we are among the first to anticipate this change. Future recruitment will be driven by the ability to read data, but also by the recruiter's capacity to assess whether a player identified by artificial intelligence can integrate into the club's culture and values. The central question will be, can he fit into our context? Does he understand our environment? Is he compatible with our identity? I remember telling Victor when he arrived, I started in 1997. What you're doing in 2023, I was already doing 26 years ago. Does that seem normal to you? Yet even today, many clubs recruit using methods that are 40 years old or more. It's truly astonishing.
What do you think about data, discipline, and competitive advantage?
I asked a similar question to a Major League Baseball president in the United States, and his answer became our motto. The competitive advantage is not in the data, but in the discipline with which it is applied. Truly data-driven clubs like Brentford, Brighton, Liverpool, or AZ Alkmaar achieve success thanks to consistency. You cannot use data one day and ignore it the next because instinct suggests otherwise. If we choose to rely on data, we must do so rigorously. What do the numbers indicate? Do we proceed or stop? A headhunter who worked for Union Saint-Gilloise told me that Tony Bloom, president of Brighton, said to him, I don't want to hear subjective opinions about a player. I want someone who understands whether that player fits our culture. When I asked the sporting director of Union what his role was, he answered, I don't even look at the player. My job is to understand if he is a culture fit.
What are the limitations in the data?
Of course, data have intrinsic limits, and that is exactly where the real challenge begins. How to use them intelligently, never ceasing to combine them with human interpretation. Relying on an algorithm alone is not enough. It requires cultural and environmental understanding of the player.
Tell us about the challenge of transition, the centrality of scouting in the case of the Paris region.
There is one final aspect that I consider fundamental, especially for a club like ours. We must never forget that when we approach a player, at least 15 French clubs, not counting foreign ones, have already contacted him before us. In this highly competitive environment, the role of the scout, the recruitment manager, or the sporting director, who often represent the first point of contact with the player and his family, becomes decisive. It is their responsibility to convey and embody the vision of the project, making it credible and engaging. Personally, I follow a very clear practice. When a player comes into my office, I almost never know what he looks like. I do this deliberately to avoid visual prejudices, unless Victor, our interview manager, deems an individual interview necessary. Because yes, nowadays we really interview players, like in a job interview, to ensure that the human profile matches what we are looking for. It is not uncommon for a player to say to me, "I had a higher offer elsewhere, but Victor managed to convince me." I would say this happens with 95% of the young players who arrive here. That is why the scout's ability to persuade, his impact in the first impression, which often is also the last, must today be an integral part of his professional skill set. Another crucial challenge concerns the transition between different leagues. How can we, through data, contextualize and predict a player's adaptation to a league like League One? This is the billion-dollar question. But it is also the area where our predictive model has improved the most and where today we make fewer mistakes than in the past. The model learns. It manages to grasp the strengths and weaknesses of various leagues compared to ours. The more transfers occur between two leagues, the more reliable the system becomes. For example, if a player comes from the Egyptian second division, from which there has never been a direct passage to League One, predicting adaptation is extremely complex. But as more cases accumulate, the model strengthens. We have also learned to give great weight to the number of minutes played. Today, it is highly unlikely that a decision is made on a player from a minor league with fewer than 1,500 minutes played. In the past, mistakes made in this regard have led us to be much more cautious. We are always in a phase of learning. The club is, the model is, and so are we. Regarding the geographic origin of players, particularly the importance of the Paris region and our football academy, I can say we have reflected deeply and critically. It is true that it is often said that the earlier one enters the club, the better. In our case, we can boast a unique feature in France. For geographical reasons, many young players join our academy in Toulouse between the ages of 8 and 12 and then reach the first team. This is the case, among others, of Nathan Ngumu, Christian Mawisa, Bafode Diakite, Guillaume Restes, and Noah Dioum, up to the generation of Mathis Alibert. When I arrived, there were 45 boys in the boarding school. Today, there are only 20. We have changed our approach. Many of them, especially those from Toulouse, return home after training because we believe that family balance is essential for their growth. Concerning the Paris region, on the other hand, we have undertaken a profound reflection. In the first 2 seasons, we analyzed in detail past failures to understand what worked and what did not. In Paris, generally, we do not have access to first-choice players. We often have to settle for the 4th or 5th choice. But when we find the right profile, the result can be excellent, as Manu Kone or Noah Dioum demonstrate. We have therefore decided to drastically reduce the number of players from the Paris region in each generation. In some years, there is not even one Parisian player. In others, only 1 or 2. We have also introduced thorough environmental analysis before proceeding with signings. If we are not convinced that a young player can adapt to life in Toulouse, even if his talent is indisputable, we prefer to say no. It even happens that parents tell us, "Everyone wants him, you should take him too." But if we do not see a real chance of integration, we refuse.
The interview with Damien Comolli has given us an authentic portrait of a sports executive who combines strategic vision, knowledge of football, and profound humanity. From his experience in major international clubs to the winning model built in Toulouse, emerges a figure capable of innovating without losing touch with the daily reality of scouting and development. His reflective approach, based on data, interviews, and environmental analysis, demonstrates how talent alone is not enough. Context, method, and the ability to say no for the good of the player and the sporting project are essential. In an industry where football moves at a dizzying speed, Comolli's testimony reminds us that strategic intelligence, coherence, and the ability to learn from mistakes remain the foundations of a solid and forward-looking club. Toulouse is not just a team, it is a laboratory of ideas and an example of sustainable growth. Behind every intuition, every choice, and every successful bet, there is invisible work that deserves to be told. Thanks to Damien Comolli for opening the doors to his thinking, and for sharing, with transparency and expertise, his vision of modern football.